Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia C. Atienza, and today we are diving into one of the most important topics in biology, which is genetics. So, this lecture will cover the DNA structure and its function, the difference between genes and chromosomes, how proteins are made or the protein synthesis, Mendelian and non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance, and lastly, how to predict offspring ratios using Punnett squares. So these concepts are foundational for learning biology. So ito yung mga topics na kumbaga mag-i-introduce sa inyo at magiging parang basic concept kapag nag-take na kayo ng higher courses sa biology. And hindi lang yon sa pag-aaral ng biology, it is also foundational for understanding life itself and also essential, of course, for your success in preparing for your college entrance exams. So let's begin. First, let's define what is DNA. So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So ano yung DNA ba na ito? Isa itong mahabang molecule which is made up of monomers called nucleotides. So nucleotides are the building blocks of DNA. Siya yung pinakamaliit na unit ng DNA. Pero yung isang nucleotide, nahahati pa rin siya sa tatlong component. And the important components of the nucleotide are a nitrogenous base or yung kung saan naka-attach yung nitrogen molecule. Next is a 5-carbon sugar. So kapag 5 carbon, ibig sabihin it's a pentose. And lastly, a phosphate group. So silang tatlo yung bumubuo sa isang nucleotide. And kapag marami kang nucleotide na nagdikit-dikit, yun yung bubuo sa DNA natin. So the DNA is shaped like a twisted ladder called the double helix. So in the 1900s, I think, it was Watson and Crick who proposed that DNA is made up of two strands that are twisted around each other to form a right-handed helix. So, ibig sabihin, kapag tinry natin na i-hold out or ilagay sa harap natin yung right hand natin, yung kanang kamay natin, with your thumb pointed up and your fingers curled around your thumb, meaning your thumb would represent the axis of the helix or yung direction ng helix, and then your fingers would represent the sugar phosphate backbone. So, ibig sabihin, yun yung direction ng pagkaka-curl nung mismong DNA. I just want you to try to imagine how the DNA is twisted. So using your right hand, i-stretch mo siya and you point your thumb pointed up. Then, kung paano na-curl yung fingers nyo inwards, ganun yung direction ng pagkaka-curl ng DNA. But why this specific shape? So first, its stability. This double helix allows the DNA to be compact and stable, protecting the genetic code inside the cell. Now, yung sugar phosphate backbone niya, ito, yung parang hand railing siya sa ladder. It forms the sides of the ladder and it shields the bases inside. So, kung titignan natin or babalikan natin yung nucleotide components, ito yung sinasabi natin na sugar, phosphate, um, backbone. Silang dalawa. Kasi silang dalawa yung parang nasa outer perimeter nung DNA. Then, yung base, nasa gitna. Ito siya, yung may kakonekta na um, base sa kabilang strand. So una, bakit itong shape na to yung na-propose? First, it's the stability. It proposes stability. Second, na-explain nito yung base pairing. So mamaya, we'll dive into that. Pero explain ko na rin ngayon na mabilisan. Yung sinasabi natin na base pairing dito, yun yung sinasabi nila na adenine pairs with thymine and cytosine pairs with guanine. So, this double helix ensures na yung pag-pair up ng adenine to thymine or thymine and cytosine to guanine, they will fit perfectly like puzzle pieces, ganon. And it maintains consistent width and thus preventing errors. Kasi syempre nga naman, alam nga naman na may mag-stick out dyan na isang base, di ba? E di, hindi na yun stable, di ba? So, third, replication. Di ba, meron tayong reasons why this shape. First is the stability. Second is because of the base pairing. Then third is replication. So, the double helix can unzip easily, parang zipper, ganun, during the replication, where each strand, eto, isang linya na yan, serves as a template to make a new complementary strand, which makes copying the DNA efficient and accurate, which is very important during the DNA replication kung saan kailangan na magkaroon ng madaming kopya ng DNA para yung isang kopya, katulad na katulad siya nung gagawin or yung mapoproduce na ibang cell sa katawan ng organism. And finally, kung bakit ito yung shape ng DNA natin, it's for protection and accessibility. This helical twist keeps the DNA tightly packed inside the nucleus. So again, DNA is found in the nucleus, but it also allows the enzymes during the process of protein synthesis to access specific regions when needed for transcriptions. Kasi hindi naman yung buong long strand ng molecule na to, yung nakokopya or yung napoproseso during protein synthesis. It's only specific places. And mamaya, titingnan natin kung ano ba yung mga specific places na yon na kinokopya or kinukuha during protein synthesis. So the unique structure of DNA allows it to be the hereditary molecule and allows it to store instructions for directing cell activity. So the double helix shape isn't just a pretty shape, it is the most efficient way to store, protect, and copy life's instructions. So katulad nga na nabanggit natin kanina na reasons why this shape. It's to store, protect, and copy exactly life's instructions. Next, where is DNA found? So, is found within the chromosomes, and chromosomes work to build proteins and assist in, replicating DNA during cell division. And syempre, saan ba nakalagay yung chromosomes? Chromosomes are located inside the nucleus of the cell. So, ito yun. So, each cell specifically eukaryotic cells, di ba meron silang nucleus. And inside the nucleus, merong chromosomes. And si chromosome, kapag in-unwind natin yan, kasi parang siyang buhol-buhol na tali, ganun. So, kapag in-unravel natin yung tali na yon, makikita natin yung long molecule na yan, yung mahabang tali na yan, which is the DNA. And a gene is a segment of the DNA that codes for a specific protein. So, kung ikukumpara natin um, sa isang library, parang yung gene, para siyang isang recipe sa isang libro. And yung libro, yun yung DNA molecule kung nasaan siya. Tapos, yung libro, nakalagay siya sa library. And yung library, yun yung chromosome. Ayun. So, chromosomes naman are long coiled packages of DNA. Sa mga tao, sa mga humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay? So, for a total of 46 chromosomes kasi 23 pairs. Now, during cell division, chromosomes become visible under the microscope, and each chromosome contains hundreds to thousands of genes. Genes are the functional units, and chromosomes are like the storage structures, parang ganun. So, ulitin natin yung parang analogy. Kasi may iba na nalilito between chromosomes, DNA, and genes. So, magkakaiba silang terminology, magkakaiba sila ng ibig sabihin. So again, genes are like the instructions written in a book, which is the DNA, and chromosomes are like the filing cabinets that keep those instructions organized. But, instructions are useless unless they are carried out, right? Because anong gagawin natin sa instructions lang? So, that's where the protein synthesis comes in. So, mamaya, we'll, tackle more about protein synthesis. So, here are the different types of nitrogen bases. A nucleotide is named depending on the nitrogenous base. So a nitrogenous base can be a purine like adenine and guanine. So ang mga purine bases natin, ito sila, si A and si G. Then we have the pyrimidine bases like the thymine and cytosine, or the C and T. So those are your nitrogen bases. Now, what does DNA look like? So the bases of the DNA pair with each other in a predictable way. Adenine will always pair with thymine, and cytosine will always pair with guanine. And that's the rule, or what we call the complementary base pairing. But why do we pair this way? Kasi 'di ba nabanggit natin in the previous slide na si adenine and si guanine purine sila, and si thymine and cytosine pyrimidine sila. So ba't hindi na lang silang dalawa yung mag-pair since they are of the same parang class or category of nitrogen base? So it's all about size and bonding. Kasi si adenine and si guanine, being the purine bases that they are, mas malaki sila na base, mas malaki yung structure nila kesa sa pyrimidine counterparts nila na sina thymine and cytosine. So imagine kapag ang pinag-pair ay si adenine and si guanine. So parang magkakaroon ng malaking base sa gitna. Tapos sunod maliit dahil nga mas maliit si thymine and si cytosine. So hindi magiging equal yung itsura. And so kapag hindi magiging equal yung itsura, hindi siya mukhang stable. Hindi siya stable na molecule, di ba? So always, a purine must pair with a pyrimidine to keep the DNA helix uniform in width. Additionally, hydrogen bonds hold the pairs together. So the AT pairs or the adenine and thymine pairs form two hydrogen bonds. So again, kapag kay adenine and kay thymine na pair, dalawang hydrogen bond yung nagli-link sa kanilang dalawa. While kay cytosine and kay guanine na pairing, tatlo yung hydrogen bonds na nagli-link sa kanilang dalawa. So, meron tayo dito na bases sa gitna ng ladder. So, parang sila yung steps ng ladder. And yung sugar and phosphate groups mo dito, parang sila yung hawakan ng ladder. So, parang sila yung railing, yung hand railing. Now, bakit kailangan na um, silang dalawa yung mag-prepare or parang bakit ganito yung pairing? So, yung difference then when it comes to the number of their hydrogen bonds explains why there are regions in our DNA na mas marami yung pairing ng cytosine and guanine than adenine and thymine. Kasi si cytosine and si guanine or yung CG pair natin, they are more stable. And what makes them more stable is because they have stronger bonding. Okay? Now, I think one of the common confusion ng mga students when it comes to the exams is thinking na si A or kahit sino sa kanila, they could pair with just anybody. You might think na A could just, pair with C or G. Pero kasi kapag yun yung nangyari, the DNA would have a bulge. Yun nga yung sinasabi ko kanina na parang may malaking part tapos may susunod na maliit na part because may mga bases tayo na mas maliit. So, hindi lahat ng nitrogen bases equal in size. So, the DNA would bulge or shrink because two large bases or two small bases, kung halimbawa man na mag-pair si cytosine si thymine, wouldn't fit properly. The double helix would lose its uniform shape. And kapag hindi na uniform yung shape niya, it might lead to errors in the protein synthesis or even kahit sa simula pa lang sa replication, sa DNA replication. So, DNA errors in the DNA replication would occur kapag hindi uniform yung shape ng DNA. Now, when it comes to the base pairing, pag-prepare up kay adenine, kay thymine, kay cytosine, kay guanine, under sila or nag-govern sila ng tinatawag natin na Chargaff's rule. Chargaff's rule. So, it is a rule na nag-state na yung total amount of adenine would always be equal to the total amount of thymine. And the same goes with cytosine, equal siya palagi sa total amount ng guanine. Okay, again, Chargaff's rule, equal palagi ang amount ni A kay T and si C kay G. So the pairing rules are strict: A with D, C with G, which ensures the DNA is stable, consistent, and can be copied accurately. Kasi baka mamaya may lumabas na question about the total numbers of, let's say, yung sa cytosine. Halimbawa, sinabi, kung ilan yung total number of cytosine, ano kaya yung equal number din ng blank na nitrogen bases, ganun. So, palagi, ang equal kay cytosine, yung number ng kay guanine. And same goes with A and T pairing. Now, DNA is written in a four-letter alphabet. You know, A for adenine, T for thymine, and C for cytosine, and G for guanine. So, yung mga letters na yon, these are the bases that form the rings of the DNA ladder. But the thing is, DNA, doesn't spell out words like we do. Hindi naman niya basta sinabi na, okay, gagawin mo yung protein na to na exactly ganun yung pagkakasabi. Paano niya yun, like, i-communicate with just using four letters? So, the DNA doesn't spell out words like, we used to when we communicate with other people, but the DNA, it groups its letters into sets of three. Okay? So, sa DNA, magbibigay siya ng order in groups of threes, or yung each set na yon ng tatlong base is called a codon. So, halimbawa, think of it like this way, na if DNA is a long sentence, then the codons are the three-letter words that are in that sentence. So, for example, ATG, adenine, thymine, guanine, is a codon. As long as tatlong set sila, tatlong set ng base, codon yon. And each codon corresponds to one amino acid. And amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So, for example, yung codon na GCA, it codes for the amino acid na alanine. And when you string the codons together, when you bring them all together, the DNA provides the instructions for linking that amino acid into a chain. And kapag na-link na yung mga amino acids sa isa't isa, they will be folded. And then after the folding, they will become a functional protein. Okay, so I think one of the most common confusion here is that thinking na yung isang letter ng nitrogenous base, it codes for one amino acid. So, hindi yun ganon. Palagi siyang tatlo. It always takes three letters to make one codon. And one codon is enough to specify one amino acid. Another thing is, minsan nami-mix up yung DNA codons with RNA codons. So remember, in RNA, C-thymine, yung letter T natin, it is replaced by uracil or letter U. Okay? In RNA, thymine is replaced by uracil. So DNA is ATG. For example, yung codon na ATG sa RNA magiging AUG. Okay? DNA, thymine, pero kay RNA, uracil siya. So, in summary, DNA's letters form the codons, and codons specify the amino acids, and then the amino acids builds the proteins. And kung ano man yung mabibuild nila na protein, kung ano man yung magiging resulting product nila, that protein will control everything inside the cell. And that is also how the genetic code turns information into life's machinery. Ganon. So, nandito na tayo. Nabanggitan natin in the previous slide. Parang yung mini na overview on how proteins are made. So, essentially, all organisms here on Earth make proteins in the same way. Lahat ng organisms gumagawa ng proteins in the same way. And the process starts with a gene, which is, the instruction manual for constructing the protein. And then the proteins are produced in a two-step process called protein synthesis, where the DNA is first transcribed into RNA, specifically mRNA. Then mRNA is translated into protein. Okay? Again, protein synthesis is a two-step process where proteins are being produced. Yung first step natin, DNA to mRNA transcription, mRNA to protein, that's translation. Now, within any cell, any type of cell, only a proportion of proteins are produced at a time. And proteins that perform essential roles are produced constantly. Ano yung mga types of proteins kaya na yun? So, yung mga enzymes involved in continuous processes, yung mga proseso na hindi pwedeng mag-stop. Katulad, eto, transcription and translation kasi part sila ng mismong machinery. So, yung mga genes na nag-code for the enzymes na ginagamit sa mga proseso na to, they're always kind of on. Parang sa on-off switch, naka-on siya palagi because the cell always needs those enzymes to live or to survive. On the other hand, syempre since parang nabanggit ko na yung parang analogy ng on and off button, meanwhile, there are also other proteins that are expressed only when they are needed. Okay, so hindi lahat ng proteins palaging pinoproduce. There are proteins na ginagawa lang kapag kailangan, katulad ng hormones. Okay, so that's an example of proteins na hindi palaging ginagawa ng katawan natin. Now, the first step in protein synthesis, or actually it's part of the interface, di ba, ng cell division. So this diagram shows the process of DNA replication. In eukaryotic cells, yung mga cells na meron nucleus, the replication occurs in the nucleus. Again, DNA replication occurs in the nucleus. So replication happens before a cell divides. Replication happens even before cell division. Bakit kailangan before cell division? Because to create new cells, it must copy its DNA to ensure na yung mga bagong cells na gagawin, they have a full set of instructions. Instructions kung paano patuloy na mabubuhay yung organism. It is also essential for growth, development, and repair of the body tissues of the organism. So, siguro nagtataka kayo ano yung parang numbering na to na 5 prime, 3 prime na yan. So, the DNA backbone, remember yung parts na nucleotide natin? It is made up of um, a sugar molecule called deoxyribose. So, yung sugar na yun, di ba, parang pa-pentagon shape siya because it's a 5-carbon sugar. So, each sugar has carbon atoms numbered from 1 to 5. So, from 1 to 5 yung numbering nung carbon atom na yun. So, yung 5' carbon, naka-attach siya sa phosphate group. Meanwhile, yung 3' carbon, naka-attach naman siya sa hydroxyl group, which will link to the next nucleotide. And this numbering gives the DNA strands a direction because one end is called the 5' end and the other is called the 3' end. Ngayon, meron kang dalawang strands ng DNA that run in opposite directions. And because they run in opposite directions, we call this anti-parallel. Okay? Now, going on with the DNA replication, you can think of it like a zipper. So, meron kang enzyme na mag-unzip or maghihiwalay ng dalawang strand mo ng DNA, which will separate the base pairs here. So, ano yung tawag sa enzyme na yon? It's the helicase. So, kapag dumaan si helicase sa gitna niyan, magsiseparate yung base pairs mo. Okay, so ayan, separated na sila. Kanina, magkahugpong silang dalawa, pero ngayon, maghihiwalay na sila. Then, another enzyme comes in called the DNA polymerase. So, si DNA polymerase, ang gagawin niya, it will replicate or kokopyahin niya yung DNA molecule to actually build a new strand of DNA. So, si DNA polymerase, yung enzyme na mag-build or gagawa ng bagong DNA, pero they can only add nucleotides at the 3' end. Okay? Nakakadagdag lang ng nucleotide or ng bagong nucleotide sa 3' end gamit si DNA polymerase. So it means that the DNA replication always proceeds in the 5' to 3' direction. Okay? So 5' to 3' palagi dahil dito lang sa dulo palaging nag-a-add or pwedeng magdagdag ng nucleotide. So, kapag na-copy na, when it's done, you actually end up with two identical DNA molecules. Each one, each, I mean, each with one old strand and one new strand. So, nakita nyo, kinopya nga niya, pero yung bagong product, yung bagong DNA molecule, meron pa rin siya nung kalahati nung luma at kalahati ngayon ng bago. So that is why we call it semi-conservative replication because your product contains half old and half new copy. So that's your DNA replication. So you can try this practice. You can pause the video and try to answer what is the complementary strand of DNA for this base sequence. So kung meron tayong one strand here na nag-start sa 5' at nagtatapos sa 3', ano kaya yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng sequence? So if you got the same answer, ibig sabihin na intindihan natin so far yung base pairing. So the first step in protein synthesis is transcription. Nasa transcription na tayo. And this process is all about turning a DNA sequence into an RNA message. So, ano yung nangyayari dito? So, while the DNA, ito yung, makikita naman natin na DNA strand siya because yung thymine, I mean, yung isa niyang pyrimidine base, thymine pa rin. And itong RNA, tingnan nyo, wala siyang letter T, wala siyang thymine. So while the DNA carries the complete set of genetic instructions for an organism's development and other metabolic processes like growth and reproduction, yung mRNA niya or yung messenger RNA, siya yung nagdadala ng specific and temporary copy from the DNA in the nucleus to the ribosomes for protein synthesis. Parang medyo loaded yung sentence na yun. But essentially, kumokopya si mRNA ng segment ng DNA na dadalhin sa ribosome for protein synthesis. Yun yun. Okay? So again, si DNA yung merong kompletong kopya ng genetic instruction. Si mRNA, kokopya lang siya ng specific and temporary message. So, see, transcription, it occurs or it happens inside the nucleus. And yung product ng prosesong ito ay mRNA strand. Yung pinaka-processing tool dito ay si RNA polymerase. It's a type of enzyme na nagbabasa ng DNA and it actually builds the mRNA. So, ano yung parang overview na nangyayari kay transcription? So, during initiation or the first stage of transcription, si RNA polymerase, it attaches itself to a special spot on the DNA called the promoter. Ngayon, si promoter, para siyang signage. Para siyang signage, para siyang karatula na nagsasabi na, hey, this is where you start to read. This is the gene where you start to copy. Parang ganon. Siya yung um, sequences siya ng DNA na nagsasabi na dito ka magsisimula mag-transcribe for this gene. Ganon. So, si RNA polymerase, marirecognize niya yon yung promoter. Again, si promoter, special spot siya sa DNA. Parang special sequence siya ng DNA na nagsasabi na ito yung start ng gene. Ganon. So, ngayon, ang gagawin ni RNA polymerase, kapag nahanap na niya si promoter, magbabind siya doon, magbabind siya kay DNA, and the DNA will unwind or unzip at that spot. Ngayon, bakit hindi na lang magsimula yung transcription just, anywhere on the DNA? Bakit kailangan ng promoter? Bakit kailangan ng signage na dito kailangan mag-start yung copying ng gene? It's because the promoter tells RNA polymerase where the gene begins. In elongation, the RNA polymerase travels along one DNA strand, which is called the template strand, to start building the complementary RNA. Again, notice na kahit kinokopya yung DNA, RNA uses uracil not thymine. Again, mRNA uses U, DNA uses T. Bakit kailangan napalitan yung isang base kung stable naman siya? 'Di ba na banggit natin kanina na kailangan ganito yung pairing nila, kailangan ganito siya naka-pair, gano'n. Kung hindi, magkakaroon ng parang bulge or shrinkage dun sa DNA. Si uracil kasi, it's a less stable molecule than thymine, which is suitable for the function of mRNA. Si mRNA, short-lived lang yung buhay niya. Kasi after niya makopya yung template dito sa DNA, lalabas na siya ng nucleus. Then, pupunta na siya agad sa ribosome para gawin yung protein synthesis. So, kumbaga, hindi kailangan na matagal nakaimbak yung information sa kanya. Kaya, okay lang gumamit ng less stable na molecule para sa kanya. So, if the DNA template, meron siyang A, ang ipapartner dyan ni mRNA ay CU, si uracil. And the template strand is the one that is being transcribed by the RNA polymerase to create an mRNA molecule that will read in the 3' to 5' direction. So kung kanina, kay DNA replication, ang basa ni DNA polymerase ay 5' to 3'. Dito naman ang basa ay 3' to 5' direction. And the template strand acts as the base for the mRNA transcription, and the coding strand determines the correct nucleotide sequence of mRNA. So, ito si coding strand. Kung makikita nyo, identical si coding strand kay mRNA kasi siya yung magdedetermine kung tama ba yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng nucleotide na kinokopya niya sa template strand. Now, paano matitigil yung proseso ng transcription? So, the termination occurs when RNA polymerase reaches a sequence na ang tawag ay terminator sequence. So, si terminator sequence, parang siyang signage na nagsasabi ng stop sign. Ganon. So, kapag na-reach yun ni RNA polymerase stops, releases the pre-mRNA kasi mag-undergo pa yan ng parang modification paglabas or bago lumabas ng nucleus. And then, kapag na-release na tong mRNA strand na to, the DNA will zip again, will close the zipper again. And so, that's how the transcription ends. Ngayon, paano makakalabas si mRNA sa nucleus? So, dadaan siya sa nuclear pores or parang mga butas or channels sa nucleus. So, dun siya lulusot. And it's one of the important details din kasi si DNA, di ba, malaki siyang molecule. So, hindi siya makakalusot, hindi siya makakalabas basta-basta sa nucleus. So, kailangan kopyahin siya ng mRNA para makalabas yung instruction. Kasi si mRNA, una, short-lived lang yung buhay niya. Pangalawa, hindi siya stable na molecule. And pangatlo, mas maliit siya na hindi hamak kesa sa DNA. So it makes the mRNA the perfect molecule to deliver the instructions from the DNA inside the nucleus to the ribosomes, which are outside the nucleus. So that's your transcription process. So now we have the translation. Dito na natin makikita kung paano nabubuo yung protein. So, translation occurs or happens in the cytoplasm of the cell. So, dun siya sa area kung saan naka-float yung ibang structures or organelles inside the cell. So, after leaving the nucleus via passing through a nuclear pore, the mRNA or the messenger RNA molecule attaches to a ribosome. Ito yung ribosome, yung parang violet na structure. So, in the cytoplasm, there are many different tRNA molecules. Ito siya yung tRNA. So, parang naka-float lang sila doon. Si tRNA, meron siyang specific anticodon. Ito siya. Yung tatlong letters din, meron siya. And meron siyang specific na amino acid na naka-attach sa kanya. So the tRNA molecules bind with their specific amino acids also found in the cytoplasm of the cell and then bring them to the mRNA molecule in the on the ribosome. So dadalhin ni tRNA yung amino acid sa ribosome and hahanapin niya kung ano yung codon na complement sa anti-codon niya. Again, the triplets of bases, triplets ba? Tama ba? Basta yung anti-codon on each tRNA molecule will pair with a complementary triplet or codon on the mRNA molecule. And so, habang nahanap niya kung saan siya dyan makikipag-pair up, yung mga amino acid na bit-bit ng tRNA, magdidikit-dikit sila dyan. And so, a peptide bond is formed via condensation reaction between the two amino acids. And kapag nagdikit-dikit yung mga amino acids na yan na yung protein mo. Yan na yung peptide chain mo. So that's how instructions from the DNA translates into protein. That's your protein synthesis. So far, natakal natin how the DNA code is transcribed into mRNA, messenger RNA, and then translated into proteins. Now, yung mga proteins na yon na pinoproseso ng mga cells natin, these proteins are what give us traits or characteristics na nakikita sa panlabas natin na kanyuan. Hindi lang naman sa panlabas, but din sa loob because we also use proteins inside our bodies. Now, traits kasi ito yung manifestations nung mga genes. So, from eye color to our blood type, these are made up of proteins made by the protein synthesis. Now, here's the question. Why do traits vary between individuals? Bakit nag-iiba-iba yung itsura ng or yung kulay? For example, ng mata natin. Bakit iba-iba yung kulay ng mata natin? Kung pare-parehas naman yung way ng pagproseso ng katawan natin ng genes. From genes to RNA to protein, 'di ba? Parang nasabi natin kanina in the previous slide na all cells or all organisms they process proteins in the same way via protein synthesis. Yung na banggit natin kanina na transcription, translation stages na part ng protein synthesis. Now, bakit iba-iba yung mga traits natin? Why does yung mga trait, they vary from one individual to another. And this is where genetics comes in. So, traits or characteristics are determined by alleles. So, yung alleles, alternative versions siya ng isang gene. Okay, so alleles are different versions of a gene. So, for example, there is one allele that might code for brown eyes, while there are also genes na nag-code for blue eyes. And when an organism inherits alleles from both parents, yung combination nila, yun yung magdedetermine ng trait na mag-exhibit or magma-manifest. Now, some alleles are dominant, meaning they mask the effect of the other allele or of another allele. Now, there are also genes that are recessive, meaning they only show up if both copies are present or the same. Okay? So, again, yung um, traits na pinag-usapan natin dito, galing siya sa protein synthesis. Meron tayong tinatawag na visible trait or yung nakikita natin kasi nasa panlabas siya nakaanyuan ng isang organism. So, ang tawag natin kapag visible trait, phenotype. And kapag yung genetic makeup naman ng isang organism, it's called the genotype. And ngayon, merong dominant na phenotype, meron ding dominant na genotype, merong recessive na phenotype, meron ding recessive na genotype. So kapag dominant, nakikita natin kasi namamask niya yung trait nung isang allele. Kapag naman recessive, it is not visible morphologically. So, hindi natin nakikita yung manifestation ng trait dun sa organism. Kasi recessive siya. Kailangan dalawang allele, dalawang genes yung present para mag-manifest siya. Meanwhile, kay dominant, you only need one allele, then mag-show up na yung trait na yon. For example, dito sa pea plant, kapag meron kang parent 1 and meron kang parent 2, and kapag pinag-pollinate mo silang dalawa, yung parent 1 mo nagmamanifest ng green na kulay, and yun yung phenotype niya, yung pagka-green. While yung genotype niya, meron siyang isang dominant allele and meron siyang isang recessive allele. Since meron siyang isang dominant allele, mas nakikita natin yung pagiging dominant ng green color. Same goes with the parent number 2 na meron siyang isang dominant na allele, meron siyang isang recessive. By the way, kapag isang dominant, isang recessive, yung meron, yung isang organism, ang tawag sa kanila, heterozygous. Heterozygous yung trait. Kapag naman, katulad nitong sa unang Punnett square, dalawa yung dominant allele na na-inherit, ibig sabihin isa siyang homozygous dominant. Kapag naman dalawang recessive allele yung na-inherit ng offspring, isa siyang homozygous recessive. Hindi nag-manifest sa kanya yung green color from parent 1 and parent 2 kasi sa kanya napunta or na-inherit niya yung dalawang recessive na genes. Meanwhile, kapag naman, if by chance heterozygous, then yung magiging offspring ni parent 1 and ni parent 2, makikita natin na green pa rin yung color ng plant. Pero yung genetic makeup niya, kalahating dominant, kalahating recessive. So while going back our previous topic about translation. So while translation explains how proteins are built, Mendelian genetics, nandito na tayo sa Mendelian genetics, the following laws will explain how the instructions for those proteins are passed down and combined. And together, they answer the question how does DNA not only make life work, but also make life diverse. Bakit iba-iba yung nakikita natin na traits kung isa lang naman yung proseso ng paggawa ng protein sa lahat ng organism. Now that we understand alleles and how dominant and recessive traits work, let's try to look at the three laws discovered by Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, and the following laws will explain how traits are passed from parents to offspring. So the first one is the law of dominance. So this law essentially explains that when two different alleles are present, one will mask the effect of the other. The dominant allele will show in the phenotype or sa physical appearance, while si recessive allele will be hidden. Hidden siya, hindi makikita na meron siyang ganun na gene unless both copies of the recessive allele are present. So in this example, we have a violet flower and a white flower. So sa species nila, sa organism na to, yung violet, yung violet na color, siya yung dominant over white. So kapag pinag-crossbreed natin yung isang homozygous violet or homozygous dominant sa isang homozygous recessive, isa sa mga probability na magiging offspring nila ay isang heterozygous. Pwede siya maka-inherit ng isang dominant, isang recessive, then yung magma-manifest or magdi-display na physical appearance niya ay yung dominant na allele. Pero kung halimbawa, um, itong heterozygous offspring natin, iko-crossbreed to another heterozygous cross organism. So, para sa silang heterozygous, so para silang may isang dominant, may isang recessive, may possibility na yung isang offspring nila ma-inherit yung parehas na recessive allele. So, kapag parehas niya yun na-inherit, magma-manifest sa kanya yung trait ng recessive allele, which is being a white flower. Now, in this law naman, the law of segregation, this law states na bawat organism daw, they carry two alleles for for every trait. So, one from each parent. And during gamete formation, the process where the sperm and egg cells are formed. So, that's during meiosis. Yung mga alleles daw na yon, they get separated or segregated. So, each gamete only carries one allele. Again, meron tayong two copies or two alleles for every trait, one from each parent, and during gamete formation or during sperm or egg cell formation, these alleles will get separated or segregated, and each gamete will only carry one copy or one allele. So this is the reason why we only get half of our DNA from each of our parents and how traits are passed down while others are not. This explains why offspring can inherit different combinations of alleles. Minsan, hindi lahat ng traits nakukuha natin from our parents. Hindi lahat ng traits nila nagmamanifest sa atin. And it's because of the law of segregation. May mga traits na hindi natin nakukuha because during meiosis, these alleles get separated or segregated. So each egg cell or sperm cell will only carry one copy of that trait. That's your law of segregation. On the other hand, we also have the law of independent assortment. So the inheritance of one allele of a gene will have no effect on the inheritance of a different allele of a different gene. Sabi dito, bawat gene daw natin may kanya-kanyang locus. Locus para siyang um, position kung saan nandun or dun mo makikita yung specific na gene. So, for example, sa sa plants, yung locus ng seed color, iba, sa iba siya nakalagay. Hindi sila nasa iisang place or hindi sila parehas ng locus ni seed shape. Okay, so different genes will be inherited separately, and one gene won't influence another. So magkaiba yung gene for seed color or yung kulay ng buto sa genes para sa shape ng buto. Ganon. Para mas maliwanag sa atin yung concept ng law of independent assortment, we have here one of the most studied plants by Mendel, the pea plant. So in pea plants, yung inheritance ng seed color, it will not affect the inheritance of the seed shape. In this crossbreed, the traits for round seed shape, yung double R, so ibig sabihin, kapag capital letter, dominant siya. So, dominant yung round seed na shape. And then, dominant din yung yellow na kulay ng seed. So, meron kang um, buto dito na dominant yung nakuha niyang genes sa seed color and sa seed shape. Meanwhile, yung pagka-wrinkled niya, recessive. So, meron kang dalawang um, letter dyan na nagre-represent ng allele na yon. It's the small letter R. And then, yung green na color ng buto, recessive din siya. So, kapag pinag-crossbreed natin yung yellow na round seed sa isang homozygous wrinkled green seed shape na buto, lahat ng magiging anak nila, lahat ng offspring, heterozygous. Heterozygous for round seed shape and yellow seed. So, kahit yung isang parent nila, wrinkled and green yung kulay, ang magmamanifest na color sa offsprings, yellow and round yung shape. But it doesn't mean na, bura na lang bigla yung genes ni green and pagka-wrinkle niya. So, on further crossing, kapag pinagbreed natin yung dalawang heterozygous na pea plant, kung makikita natin sa resulting Punnett square, lalabas or magma-manifest yung green na 'to. Kung titingnan natin, hindi siya wrinkled, 'di ba? Pero hindi siya hindi siya wrinkled, pero green yung kulay niya. Meron din naman na yellow yung kulay, dominant yung nakuha niyang gene for the color, pero yung nakuha niyang allele or yung nakuha niyang gene for the shape of the seed ay wrinkled. So, yan yung sinasabi ng law of independent assortment. Yung inheritance ng isang gene, hindi niya may influensyahan yung inheritance ng iba pang gene kapag na-breed together. So, if plants' gametes could carry any combination of the alleles for these traits, and yung pagkakaiba-iba ng itsura nila, pagkakaiba-iba ng genetic makeup nila, this creates genetic variation. So that's your three laws of Mendelian genetics. So together, yung mga laws na napag-usapan natin in the previous slides, law of dominance, law of segregation, and independent assortment, they form the foundation of Mendelian genetics. And they explain why offspring inherit traits in predictable ratios, which we can calculate using Punnett square. So I have here a sample problem, and let me read it to you. You can pause this video and try to answer this question on your own. Sickle cell anemia is a recessive trait in humans. In order to express the disease, an affected individual must inherit two recessive alleles. So, kailangan dalawang recessive alleles para mag-manifest yung sakit. What is the probability that the offspring of two heterozygous parents will also be heterozygous? Okay, so yung recessive trait, para mag-manifest siya, kailangan um, small letters parehas yung magma-manifest. Small. Ngayon, sabi, yung parents daw ay heterozygous. So, let's say si mother, meron siyang dominant and recessive allele. Si father, meron siyang dominant and recessive. And i-plot natin sa Punnett square para malaman natin yung probability ng offspring nila heterozygous din. So, ibig sabihin, katulad ng parent. So, dito yung kay mom, isang malaking S, and maliit na S. Naging malaki siya. Yan, maliit lang. Then, kay father, lagyan natin ng mark. Dito kay mother, dito kay father. So, malaking S, then maliit na S. So, kapag pinag-cross natin yung dalawang dominant, para sa dominant yan. Dominant and recessive, isang dominant, isang recessive, isang dominant, isang recessive, then parehas sa recessive. So, ang tinatanong dito, yung probability ng offspring or magiging anak nila heterozygous o katulad ng parents. Meron tayo ditong isang heterozygous, then isa pa ulit. So, we have two combinations or two na heterozygous over 4. Kasi dapat binibilang din to and ito. So, we have 2 over 4, which is 1/2. Probability yung tinatanong. So, 1/2 is 50%. So is 50% also your answer? So ganito mag-compute ng ratio using Punnett squares. Magiging careful lang tayo minsan kasi hindi naman palaging heterozygous yung tinatanong. Minsan yung probability ng offspring na maka-inherit nung sakit. So, since heterozygous yung both parents, may possibility na yung offspring mag-manifest sa kanya yung sickle cell anemia dahil merong recessive alleles yung both parents. So, that's your um, calculation using Punnett squares for predicting ratios of offspring. Now, we've used Punnett squares to calculate probabilities of traits under Mendel's rules or patterns of inheritance. But here's the catch kasi, hindi lahat ng traits or characteristics nagfa-follow dun sa simpleng pattern of inheritance ni Mendel. Hindi lahat merong simpleng dominant and recessive pattern. You know, biology is full of exceptions that make inheritance actually more interesting because sometimes both alleles are expressed equally. Okay? Minsan, yung alleles, pantay silang na-express. And kapag ganun yung situation, we call it codominance. Ano yung isa pang example ng codominance? Human blood type, 'di ba? Yung human blood type na AB, kasi parehas silang may A and B proteins. So, meron tayong mga blood types na blood type A, blood type B lang, and meron tayong blood type AB. Ibig sabihin, codominant yung expression ng A and B protein sa kanila. Meanwhile, sa mga blood type O, wala silang A and B protein. Now, other times naman, alleles don't completely dominate one another. And kapag nangyayari yon, walang nangingibabaw sa mga alleles. This is called incomplete dominance, where the traits is blended. Katulad ng sample flowers natin dito, like this red and white flowers, nagkakaroon ng intermediate na trait. Kasi hindi fully nag-manifest yung red, yung pagka-red or pagka-white sa kanya. So, nagkakaroon tayo ng intermediate. Example nito ng incomplete dominance sa mga tao ay yung type of hair. Now, we have curly hairs as traits sa mga tao. Meron din naman ng mga tao na they have straight hair. So, parehas yun na magkaibang allele. However, saan nanggaling yung mga tao na may wavy hair? 'Di ba? So, si wavy hair, hindi siya exactly na curly type ng hair. Hindi rin naman siya buhaghag na parang straight hair, ganun. So, si wavy, nasa gitna siya. Minsan straight, minsan curly, parang ganun. But that's another manifestation of incomplete dominance. Now, lastly, in some cases, traits are linked to sex chromosomes. And we call these sex-linked traits. For example, um, meron tayong example dito ng parents na merong hemophilia. So hemophilia is an X-linked recessive genetic disorder. Ano yung nangyayari kapag meron kang hemophilia, it is characterized by deficiency in blood clotting due to the mutations on the X chromosome. So, ibig sabihin, halimbawa, nasugatan ka, hindi basta-basta na tumitigal yung pagdugo ng sugat kasi nahihirapan yung katawan mo na mag-form ng blood clot. So in this example, we have a father with no hemophilia and a mother who carries the gene for hemophilia gene. So notice na carrier yung label sa kanya. It's because hindi nagmamanifest yung sakit sa kanya. Wala siyang hemophilia, pero carrier siya ng genes. So, ibig sabihin, na-mask ng or mas nangibabaw yung dominant na genes na walang hemophilia kasi dun sa genes niya ng hemophilia. So, wala siyang hemophilia, but she carries the gene for it. Now, kapag nag-breed si father and si mother dito sa example na to, magkakaroon sila ng probability ng gantong anak. Because hemophilia genes are passed down on the X chromosome, males with hemophilia are much more likely to have the bleeding symptoms than females. So, katulad dito, pwedeng yung anak na lalaki walang hemophilia. Kasi, syempre, yung Y chromosome niya galing sa father. Then, yung X chromosome niya na isa, pwedeng yung dominant na gene galing kay mother. So, kapag yun yung nakuha niya, wala siyang hemophilia. Hindi rin niya yun mapapass down sa future generations niya. However, paano kung si anak na lalaki, na-inherit niya yung recessive na gene? Eh, di ba ang recessive na gene for hemophilia, ibig sabihin magmamanifest yon since isa lang yung X niya, walang another allele sa kanya, walang another chromosome na pwedeng maging dominant yung gene doon para mag-mass sa kanya. So, since isa lang yung X niya and yung nakuha pa niyang X na chromosome, yun yung recessive, magkakaroon siya ng hemophilia. Ngayon, meron din naman na anak na babae na hindi magiging carrier ng gene because yung makukuha niyang chromosome from mother is yung X na dominant. And syempre, yung other X niya na chromosome, always from the father. So, wala siyang um, hemophilia gene. Pero, may probability din naman na yung anak na babae maging carrier din ng sakit because ang may inherit niya na isang gene ay yung recessive gene mula kay mother. Ngayon, paano naman magkakaroon ng anak na babae na magkakaroon ng hemophilia kung si father ay meron ding hemophilia? Si mother, either may hemophilic gene siya or carrier din siya. Basta si father ang magkakaroon ng sakit, si anak na babae, magkakaroon din sila ng sakit na yun. So another example of this in humans is color blindness. So color blindness is more common in males because the gene is carried on the X chromosome. So those are examples of sex-linked genes. Now, hemophilia and color blindness are just, few examples of how sex-linked traits can influence human health and everyday life. And by studying these traits, we can see how inheritance patterns go beyond the simple dominant and recessive rules. They actually extend to the unique roles of X and Y chromosomes. Now, as we end this lesson, let's remember the bigger pictures here. Una, definition of genetics. It is the science of how information is passed from one generation to another or to the next generation. From Mendel's experiments on the pea plants to modern DNA analysis, yung principles or yung tatlong laws natin na Mendelian genetics. And then here, an example of a non-Mendelian inheritance. They all come together to explain the diversity we see in living organisms. So ultimately, genetics is not just about, the simple Punnett squares or probability. It's more on understanding how life came to be, the blueprint of life, and these principles will help us predict yung mga traits, ma-explain yung mga variations between humans or between organisms, and try to connect yung molecular biology to real-world examples katulad ng manifestations ng mga sakit na sex-linked trait or parang nakakarry through uh, either X or Y chromosomes. So, as you prepare for your exams, keep in mind that genetics is both a foundation of biology and a foundational concept which we use to try to understand ourselves because it shows us how inheritance shapes health, diversity, and the continuity of life. So, this is the end of our lesson in genetics. I hope to see you in our next lesson.